If you're interested in what I look like in real life and want to learn more about me, then follow my Instagram page at Joe the Insomniak. I was camping in a valley by myself with no cell service. I stayed late on the trail and ran into a nice local dude as it's getting dark. He showed me a local camping spot close to the road and riverbed, but camouflaged. I had a fire, drank beer, listened to one of my friend's comedy podcasts. I was loud and visible. Because it is really dark, I decided to sleep in the back of my truck, under my trooper, next to all of my gear, as opposed to setting up the tent. Now the next morning, I made a fire, cracked a beer, and started making breakfast. Then I noticed that there's a man at the edge of my camp. He comes closer, but never looks directly at me. The dude looks like he's homeless, has a long ratty beard, and at least 100 plastic bags all tied across his clothes. I comment how nice the day is. No response from him. I offer breakfast. Nothing. He sort of paces around the perimeter of my camp. I offer him a beer, but he just turns around. Now he's just standing there, staring off with his back to me, wandering around. I'm realizing that nothing good's gonna happen from this. I had my bear spray and buck knife. I give him the ultimatum. You either go away or I'm gonna make you. He ignores me. I grab the bear mace and take a few steps towards him. He now sulks away. I threw my stuff in the truck and left that place immediately. I wondered how long he'd been watching me there during the night, or what he wanted. I don't know how he got himself out there, all by himself with seemingly no equipment. I mean, we're really in the middle of nowhere here, but yet, he seems fine. My wife and I were camping alone, in a kind of remote area, but there were little campsites made by the park's depths that were flat and clear. We found a great looking spot, but it was right on a lake, which I thought was to be avoided. But we were beginner backpackers, and figured the park's depth wouldn't make a spot there if it wasn't safe. So we set up camp mid-afternoon. I was feeling a little beat, so took a short nap, while my wife read a book. When I woke up, she told me that somebody was walking around in our campsite. I looked around, but didn't see anything. There were some other campsites maybe 500 feet away, so I figure it's another camper checking out the place. Late that night, after we'd gone to bed for the night, it was drizzling a little rain, and I was sort of half asleep at probably 2 or 3 a.m. Then I realized that if I listened really close, I could hear somebody walking around our campsite very quietly. I didn't have a knife or any kind of weapon, so I was freaking out. I then carefully woke my wife up to get her ready. We now listen together. Then we suddenly hear it. It sounded like a cat clearing itself. Then, more walking in a circle around the tent. Then the sound of a large cat lapping up water just feet from our tent. Then walking back to the tent immediately beside us. I heard it flop down on the ground. Cat owners know how a relaxed cat flops over, but it was way bigger. I was trying to control my breathing, as I didn't want it to hear me panicking so hard. It hung around for a long time. I really had to pee, but I wasn't ready to move. Now the scariest part is that, this whole time, it was so quiet that if you didn't concentrate, you'd be sure that it wasn't even there. It did eventually leave, but I couldn't have been sure. It may have left way before or after I thought it did. Eventually, I was sure I hadn't heard it in a long time, so I poked my head out, didn't see anything, and went back to bed. The next morning, there are massive paw prints in our campsite, just like cat's paws, but more like 8 inches across. Later, after getting home, I called the park ranger to let them know what had happened. They told me that it was a mountain lion, and how lucky I was to actually have survived. I live in a very small town, where that I once worked from my laptop. Like, the population is 200 small. I was in a small cabin in the woods, next to the highway. One day, I was walking my dog, and I heard 2 gunshots somewhere nearby. I didn't think much of it. It's a hunting area, and stuff like this can happen all the time. It's kind of redneck. The following day, a truck pulls up. I don't even know anyone in this town, so it's weird. And I'm put off. The guy calls me over, saying he's my neighbour, asking if I too heard the shots. I said yeah. He claims it was his neighbour taking pot shots at his home over a land dispute. Don't ask me to be a witness for him or anything, just if I heard it. Okay, seems really odd to me. Never met this guy before, and when I say neighbour, I mean a kilometre out of sight. The guy sees my dog digging somewhere. It's not important. Suddenly, he yells at her to not do that. Gets out and says that she's iffy. She stares at him. I call her over. I want him to see that my dog's not a threat, but he grabs her. She really didn't like it and started yelping. I'm like, dude, stop. He says to me whether I own any guns myself. I say no. She's a great dog trainer. He asked me to go over now and mow his lawn, and please bring my dog. In the strangest way, just like that. Please ensure that you bring, and my dog's name. I can't explain it. His mannerisms, the way he acted, the way he spoke, everything was just off. He leaves there soon after, and I'm thinking, God, I just told this guy that not only did I hear the gunshots, that I'm unarmed as well. How do I even know it was the neighbour like he claimed to be, and not in fact this weird dude who shot at someone's home, and trying to see who might be a witness? I wouldn't go to his home, not a chance in hell. It's a horrible feeling. Then, he kept showing up and asking why, calling and texting me. I gave him my number hoping he'd stop, but he didn't. He was really adamant that I got over to him. Turns out, the guy's totally crazy. He lost everything. In a very dangerous mental state. Nothing to lose. The small store owners in town explained the guy to me. Apparently, he's the most hated in the entire valley. Really bad reputation. Now I'm really freaking out. I found it very hard to sleep after that. Cabin in the woods, nobody nearby that would hear any commotion. So many places to hide. Just bear spray and a knife. And the guy knows that I have no guns. I would be kept up for hours listening at night for any movement outside. It is dead silence here. One night, in the middle of the night, my dog begins to growl, then growl more. I don't hear anything. It doesn't matter. Every room in that cabin had a window, but the bathroom. I get up, grab the knife and my bear spray, and lock myself in the bathroom for hours just listening. I eventually fell asleep in there. I don't think I've ever felt that kind of dread before. I just pictured this lunatic sneaking up with a shotgun to wipe me out. I was sure that he was going to get me for listening to him murder someone a few days earlier. God, it's just awful. I moved, but the new landlords were equally creepy and even started trying to steal my dog, even though they had three literally. I heard them discussing it, how they had to make themselves the in crowd. They actually began hand feeding their dogs, as well as mine when I wasn't looking. They were really creepy. They went to a market one morning. I packed all my stuff into my uninsured van with no license, my pup, and bailed that town and never looked back again. Good God, it was Hills Must Have Eyes stuff that was happening there. I'm sure something would have happened if I remained in that cabin any longer. My girlfriend and I were doing an overnight hike on the North Country Trail, and after hiking some amount of miles, we decided to hang up our hammocks and rest. We were hanging out about 30 feet off the trail, just snoozing a little, when I heard a sound. I sat up in the hammock and saw there was a massive coyote about 10 feet away. We locked eyes, but it took off. At the same time, something that sounded far bigger took off from the other side of us. We packed up our hammocks and kept going. About 5 minutes down the trail, we came up to a black bear cub and scared it off by accident, and it took off to its mother. I was out walking around the bush, hunting for upland birds. I walked through a bit of a valley as a shortcut to get to another area, where I come across a guy standing on the trail with an AR-15 at the ready position. Instantly, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, instinctively knowing that this was not the place to be. Trying my best to stay calm, I said, "Hey, I'm just out here bird hunting. How are you?" "Fine. I'm hunting deer." Now, deer season wasn't open. AR-15s are not legal for deer. He was not dressed for hunting. As a matter of fact, he appeared homeless, like he hadn't changed clothes or bathed for days. Think of the scariest 50-year-old meth addict you can think of. Give him an AR-15. You're probably close. Do you know the best way for me to go to find some birds? Well, I imagine you might find some the way you come down. go back. His voice got noticeably sharper, in a way that he obviously wanted me to get out of there now and not bug him. I didn't even question him. I turned right around and got the hell out of there. I live in a rural town, surrounded by mountains and forest, so camping is almost a weekly event, even in winter. The one I can't shake though is when me and my friends broke off from our group of olders to go to a better fishing spot about a mile away. We only brought one tent for the group, so we built a lean-to against a larger boulder in a clearing. I couldn't sleep. I had the feeling that somebody was watching us. I assumed it's a mountain lion, which isn't too big of a deal considering their behaviour, so I throw some more logs onto the fire. I then looked up from it, under a light full of moonlit surroundings. There's a man standing at the edge of the clearing about 80 yards away. I was completely frozen. I could not take my eyes off him. He now stared back. He walked off in the opposite direction after about a minute or two. I doubt he had any ill intentions, but I never know. I sat there holding my friend's 357 the entire night. I was canoe camping with a friend in Michigan, camping at a fire trail. We saw some guys in a jeep and Amish in a wagon, but nothing after dark. We were near the riverbank, and there was a high area with the remnants of a fire, so we thought people would come by later. Around midnight, I hear a car coming down the fire lane towards us, stopping, backing up, going forward, backing up, pulling forward, and backing up again. This goes on for like 5 minutes at a time, and they kept on getting closer. Eventually, they're at the area right above us, doing this weird driving thing. I can see them shining lights. My friend is still asleep. I try to shake her leg and wake her up. They then drive down the riverbank, doing the same weird thing, until they're facing our tent, shining their headlights and torches at us. I really didn't want to confront them, as we're two girls alone without weapons, but I leaned over my passed out friend and opened the tent. It's some guys in a pickup. They see me and continued backing up, then pulling forward, and continued this thing all the way out of sight. The whole time, pulling forward, backing up, then going forward. I have no idea what was wrong with them, or what they're doing out there in the middle of nowhere to this day. When I was younger, around 14 or 15 years old, my family used to camp at a state park. Every night, my friend and I would walk through the woods. We called this a ritual. This particular night, we decided to walk further into the woods than usual. Now we had flashlights, but we'd rather navigate the woods without them. So we're about half a mile from the nearest campsite when we hear a whispering behind us. Obviously, we hit the flashlights and spun around, but didn't see anything. So we kept walking, and we hear it again. This time, we stop and look around a bit, and decided to head back to our campsite. That's when we're finally able to see what the whispering was. It's a lady crawling on the ground, just whispering random words. She was wearing dark clothes, covered in dirt. When she notices us, she stands up, declares that she's looking for our campsite. We ended up walking her back to the campground and tried helping her find the group. Turns out, she was really out of it. Her friends didn't even notice she was missing, and she doesn't remember any of it. We drove across the country to go to Glacier National Park, and mid-drive, it caught on fire. We got there, and they directed us to the west side of the park, because it was still open. We spent the night there as well. In the morning, we decided to do a little hiking and swim in a lake. It was beautiful, but ash was falling like snow. It should have been alarming, but there's others around, well, at least for a while, and we figured that if it was something serious, somebody would have told us. After swimming, we decided to go down a little town we saw because they had a laundromat. We thought that we could give ourselves some clean clothes there and a lunch or something. So we packed up the car and tent and drove down. At this point, there's a flurry of activity and our car was stopped, and they were checking this to mark us off. Because the park had been evacuated and we're missing, the fire had turned extremely close. Like so close we drove down and we could see the flames. We never really comprehended fully how bad of a situation we got ourselves into. And it was all because I was annoyed that one guy on the trip only kept on wearing one pair of shorts, and the other's clothes had claimed they were dirty, but the shorts weren't that bad. We probably would have died if that hadn't have happened. We went on a group camping trip in the middle of nowhere in Arizona, only to wake up to hear something sniffing the outside of our tent. My immediate reaction is that it's probably a bear or some animal that come across our sight, and just maybe my idiot friends didn't tie up their garbage. Seconds later, I can hear the animal or whatever it is go to the next tent over. Everybody in mine grabs one another quietly to acknowledge that we're all awake, aware of what's happening. Moments later, a friend in another tent popped out to scream and make noise. He had a handgun too, hoping it'd scare the animal off. Turns out, it was a guy who was absolutely off his mind. He decided to sniff our tents, going through the coolers looking for food. Our friend chased him off. We immediately packed up and left. A year after the incident, my idiot friends and I went back to the same area, thinking what we encountered was a one-time incident. This time, we thought we'd all outsmart any possible creepers. Instead of camping in tents, we all slept in the bed of our trucks and SUVs. 'Cause you know, they can't possibly sniff a Toyota. It's the middle of the night. I'm passed out in the back of my SUV when suddenly, I feel a light on my face. Naturally, I wake up, cussed them out and said what are they doing, thinking it's my friends. However, I instantly realised that I should pretend to be asleep and not let the individual know that I was fully awake. I lay there next to my girlfriend, hoping she would do the same as I kept an ear out for any weird sounds like sniffing. After the light left my car, I can hear the person walk to the next truck, shine his light on my friend's face in there. I slowly look up, and I see that there's just some older guy staring there, looking at everybody while they slept. I waited until he left the campsite, busted out of my truck, woke up everyone, and got the hell out of there.